Hello, and welcome to my show, Searching for Integrity. My name really is John Smith, and I'm searching for people with integrity. Why? Because our country suffers from IDD, integrity deficit disorder. We have as our guest today former Senator Phil Gramm, U.S. Senator, who is the co-author of The Myth of America, Inequality, How Government Biases Policy Debate. That's quite a title, quite a title. And I'm going to say now at this point, you're there? Are you there, Will, Phil?
Yes, of course.
Wonderful. All right, good. I have started reading the PDF that they send me, and I got through the easy part, is the preface, and and sure enough, you're the guy that wrote it, and it's appreciated for you to do that. I want to say that we have others that we think in terms of co-authors, and I think that the co-authors are. Would you like to introduce those, Phil? Co-authors?
Yeah, Bob Eklund, who's an economist, an outstanding academic who has written over 40 books and 200 peer-reviewed articles, and one of the outstanding economists in the country. And John Early, who's an economist and a statistician, who was twice assistant commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and who really understands the American system of collecting and reporting data, I think, better than anybody else in America. The book is a joint product. We wrote every word of it together. We analyzed together. It's not a book that three different people wrote and slapped together. Also, John and your listeners, don't be put off by tables and numbers. The book is straightforward and simple. It requires only adding and subtracting to understand the fact that government, in its fundamental statistic, household income, doesn't count 2/3 of all transfer payments as income to the recipients. It doesn't count refundable tax credits, where the recipient gets a check from the federal government as income to the people who get the check. It doesn't count food stamps, where you get a debit card and you buy groceries with it, as income to the people that get the debit card and buy the groceries. It doesn't count Medicaid, where government pays your health care bills, or rent subsidies, where government pays all or part of your rent. In fact, it doesn't count over 100 federal, state, and local programs that are transferring income from taxpayers to recipients as income for the transfer payment. It also counts taxes as income lost to the people that pay the taxes. So that, for example, in calculating income inequality, the census says that the top 20% of earners earn 16.7 times as much as the bottom 20%. But we show that if you count all transfer payments as income to people that got the transfer payments, and if you count all taxes as income lost by people that paid the taxes, that the ratio is not 16.7 to 1, but 4 to 1. We show that the poverty rate is not 12%, but between 2 and 3%. And that while we all hear every day about growing income inequality in America, Bernie Sanders tells us that it's obscene and unsustainable. The Economist magazine says it's universally acknowledged. And the Census Bureau says that inequality has grown by 22.7% since 1947. We show, in fact, that if you count all the transfer payments and taxes, that it's actually slightly lower today than it was in 1947. And those are pretty profound results, but we're using government data. And while we have presented the findings of this book at Stanford, we have presented it all over the country at universities and at think tanks. Nobody has really challenged us. They made arguments that, well, that if you give people a lot of money, they got a lot of money. Well, that's true. But no one has said that what we're saying is wrong.
Right, right. Now, what will they, with the comments, of course, are they going to be calculating in terms of usage of this? And if so, how would that be about that?
Well, one of the things we argue in the conclusion of the book is that the Congress should require the Census Bureau to count all transfer payments and all taxes in its calculation of income and poverty and inequality. Now, John, the book goes into a lot of other subjects. It goes into what about the super rich? Do they pay their fair share of taxes? How does our tax system compare with other countries' tax system in terms of being progressive? That is, the percentage of income taxes relative to income that is paid. How do we compare to other nations? We address all those issues, and we address mobility. Is the American dream alive? Do people have a chance to do better than their parents? Well, 93% of Americans who grow up in the bottom 20% of income earning households end up as adults having a higher income than their parents. And 62% of them have their incomes move into a higher quintile of income earners, including 6.1% that go all the way to the top. So is it better to be born rich and brilliant and beautiful? Yes. But poor, ordinary people succeed in America every day. It happens so often that there's nothing newsworthy about it. And that basically is a summary of the book.
Well, that's good. I mean, I'm going to track through the chapters here. I'm a guy that likes to talk about the table of contents. That's usually what I do when it comes to a book, and apparently I've got one here. And you already mentioned about the super rich. That's chapter 6.
Yeah, listen.
7.
There are people in America who are rich. Bill Gates is rich. But am I poorer because Bill Gates is rich? Well, no, I'm richer because Bill Gates is rich, because I use products that his company developed every day. Right. He only owns 7% of Microsoft. Who owns the other 93%? Basically, our pension funds. So does he pay his fair share of taxes? The percentage of income paid in taxes rises up to the 0.01% of income earners. And then for a very small number, about 400 households, it declines slightly because they make income mostly through capital gains and they give so much money away, it affects their tax rate. But going back to Bill Gates, is the world better off with him giving his money away or with government spending it? I would argue, having spent 25 years in government, that we're better off with him giving it away than we are with government spending it. And in the case of Warren Buffett, another one of these 400 mega rich people, Warren Buffett's investments have created hundreds of thousands of jobs. They've improved our lives, and he's doing more good for the economy by wise investments he makes than the government will do when he dies and they take 40% of what he's accumulated and spend it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of our approach to the super rich. One other thing, the top 10% of income earners in America pay a higher share of their income in income taxes, including Medicare taxes, than the top 10% of income earners in any other country in the world. And the bottom 90%, as a result, pay less.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of, to paraphrase Al Gore, that's an inconvenient truth that many people don't want to hear. And a final point, with all of this talk about billionaires, and if we could force billionaires to pay more taxes, we could have all these wonderful things. Mm-hmm. If you took every penny of income of every billionaire in America that government is not already taking, you couldn't fund government for a week. The government taxes middle and upper middle Americans for the same reason Willie Sutton robs. That's where the money is. There are not enough rich people in terms of income to fund the government under any circumstance. Mm-hmm. So when the government's going to give you stuff and talks about financing, taxing billionaires to pay for it, my advice is don't believe it.
Right. Even I figured that one out. That's the way, though. Let me ask you this, Phil. The inequality in producing and consuming in America. Can you elaborate some on that?
Yeah, look, the bottom 20% of income earners in America in the year before the pandemic, where we got good data, earned about $5,000 on average and received $45,400 of benefits from the government. Government basically provided 90% of the income of the bottom 20% of income earners. In 1967, it provided $9,700 per bottom 20% families in terms of earnings. Today, it provides $45,400. And in 1967, 68% of these low-income people worked, that is prime work age people. Today, only 36% work. Mm-hmm. So it's true that we have eliminated poverty in America with government transfer payments. We've substituted our elimination of want for idleness. And so how good a trade that is, you can argue about it. When Lyndon Johnson started the war on poverty, he argued that the objective was not to give people things, but to make them self-sufficient and to develop their own abilities. Clearly, the program has failed at that objective.
Right. I recall that. I was reading an article the other day about that. Let's do the flip side here. You talked some about super rich. What about poverty in America?
Well, if you count all transfer payments, between 2.5% and 3% of Americans are still poor. And they're primarily people who have fallen through the cracks, that don't, many of whom have severe mental illness and or have drug addiction problems. And these are the people that you see on the streets in San Francisco and Austin. And increasing expenditures on food stamps or housing subsidies has no effect on these people because they're not applying for the programs. If you're going to help them, you're going to have people find out what their problem is and help them deal with it. And our massive expansion in the welfare program has not reached those people. It has continued to give more and more money to people who have not been a very long time. I'll tell you, John, another finding of the book is that because of the massive growth in transfer payments in real dollar terms in the last 50 years, the bottom 60% of American income recipients have very similar incomes. Even though 92% of prime work age persons in the middle quintile of earners works, and only 36% of the prime work age persons in the bottom quintile work. And needless to say, that's caused resentment. And it's not racism, it's resentment against an injustice. And I think one of the things, we don't make an argument in the book that we're giving people too much money or too little money. We're just saying we need an accurate accounting of what we're doing and what it means. Let's get our facts straight. But if you're going to give people $45,400 a year, you're going to have a lot of people who are going to choose not to work. And if you want to get them back into the labor market and back into productive America and get them in a position where they can advance themselves and their families and develop their abilities, it seems to me you got to have a work requirement like we had under President Clinton in AFDC, which was a small sliver now of the welfare program. It worked. It's the biggest social success of my political career. I should reinstate it and apply it to every able-bodied recipient of means-tested government benefits.
Well, I wonder though, are those people going to face that? Are they going to understand that? Is it something that they're going
to? In aid to families with dependent children, over half the recipients went to work over a 3-year period. And the net result was many of them were much better off. It's a judgment society needs to make, but we're debating these issues today based on measures that are demonstrably inaccurate. I'll just give you another example.
Good.
Every year, the Bureau of Labor Statistics comes out with what Americans spend, how much they spend on consumption. Every year, the Census Bureau comes out with how much their income is. Last year, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says the bottom 20% of income earners spent twice their income. Well, how is that possible? The second quintile spent 11% more than its income. And the top quintile spent only half its income, even though nobody claims or believes that they're saving half their income. Well, what is missing? What is missing is the 2/3 of the transfer payments that are not counted by the Census Bureau in calculating income, and taxes that higher income households pay, which is money they don't have to spend. Again, we are debating policy based on a misstatement of the facts. Now, we don't get into how this happened. Well, we talk about the original 1947 structure in the how census measures income, and that it was a reasonable assumption then, the simplifications they made, but the dozens of decisions they've made since, as benefits were added not to count them, we don't get into why that happened. All we say is that it did happen and that it had a profound effect on our measure of income, poverty, and inequality.
Well, it certainly is something that I believe that people need to understand this book and use the book and use
Well,
it
that's
on
what we believe.
Yeah, I understand, but it's a good analysis. It's beyond that. Here, 50 years of economic progress, and all the others seem to have begun at the end of World War II.
Yeah, and the next to last chapter basically looks at the last 50 years. It's a much criticized period, but we show that it's been a period of incredible progress and that there's been a cornucopia of goods and services produced and that they've been widely distributed. Again, some people have been successful, but you know, America does not promise equality of outcome. Abraham Lincoln said, America promises a fair chance, an open way to use your industry and intellect. But not everybody has the same industry and intellect, and even those who do don't always use it. So it's not a failure of America that some people are very successful and some people aren't. The question is, do people have an opportunity? And in our section on mobility, we show that Americans are very successful at moving up. And again, if you just simply talk, you don't have to do much statistics to discover, if you talk to people, that in their own personal history, they've experienced this. Neither of my parents graduated from high school. Now, my grandmother, who could barely write, and everything she ever wrote was with a pencil on a pad that had lines on it, she wasn't going hungry poor, but she was certainly lower income. But with her values, there was no way anybody could fail in the last 50 years in America. And I long ago threw out my values and adopted her values. And it worked. That's the point. It worked.
Good.
If you work, America works for you.
That's right.
Now, there are always people who say, well, they done me wrong, or it's not my fault. In some cases, that's true.
Right.
But very, very, you can't fail in America by simply making one or two mistakes. You have to make mistake after mistake after mistake, because this country is a very good country in terms of giving people a chance and giving them a second and third chance. And we're all living proof of it.
I believe it. Indeed, I do. I believe that you have an opportunity here to tell my audience where they can find your book and or where they can find you.
All right. Well, my book, The Myth of American Inequality, if you Google that, it's going to send you immediately to people who are selling the book.
Right.
And you can order it and they'll deliver it. It's in the second printing, so it's selling well. And I'm excited about that because I want to change public policy. I am a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute in Washington. And you can reach me through there. Just Google American Enterprise Institute and up it'll pop and it'll tell you where to send an email. And again, the book tries to get the facts straight about America. Mm-hmm. And what I believe the book proves is that America is a better country than you think. That Americans are better off than we believe. And that while there are rich people out there, they got rich by making us richer, not by making us. And if we apply ourselves, we can succeed. And the book shows in hard facts that has been the case in America in the whole post-war era. So the myth of American inequality, just Google it and it will come up and it'll tell you where to order it. Large bookstores will also have it. Smaller bookstores may not, but you can order it online or big bookstores will begin to have it.
Well, thank you, Senator Phil Gramm.
Thank you, John.
You've done a good thing here in the last 30 minutes or so. And I want to thank my listeners for tuning in again to Searching for Integrity. And I want to say to everyone, so long and happy trails to all.